Hello, and I wanted to welcome you to another episode of our Unveiled Faces. From time to time, I make audio recordings as well as video recordings. And today is one of those days where you'll be able to hear an audio of this week's inspiring message. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that it encourages both your day and your week. Welcome to our Unveiled Faces. I am creator and host Rosie Leonore, and I'm here to help you find strength and inspiration in your daily spiritual restoration journey with God. I pray that this episode will encourage your faith. Enjoy. There's a very specific verse that is one of the most powerful verses in the Gospels that I have personally ever read, and it is simply this: Jesus wept. In John 11, verse 35, it says Jesus wept. This verse is wrapped with so much. There is depth. There is so much meaning in there. Let's unwrap it. So in John 11, throughout the entire chapter, the first 3 parts specifically, it was all about the death of Lazarus. 3 parts devoted. To be more specific, there were exactly 44 verses devoted to the death of Lazarus. To give a little background, Lazarus was someone who was very close to Jesus. Jesus was very close to Lazarus and his family, to his sisters, Mary and Martha. He had a very close relationship with them. Apparently, he stayed in their home often. When he would travel, he would move about. And as you may already be aware, the disciples that followed Jesus also included women who followed him, Mary being one of them. So again, the relationship that Jesus had with Lazarus and his sisters, this family was very dear to him. So already you can see why Jesus would feel something towards the death of someone who was very, very close to him. But here is what really gets me. So Jesus knew he was going to raise him from the dead. In fact, after this verse, it speaks about Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. So why would he weep? I wanted to talk about the empathy that Jesus has. I'm going to read starting in verse 32 in chapter 11, so we can get a little context. It says, "When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.' When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. 'Where have you laid him?' he asked. 'Come and see, Lord,' they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, 'See how he loved him.'" See how he loved him. He did love Lazarus. But I think more than that, he was moved. It says here, he saw Mary weeping, and then he saw the others who cared about Lazarus weeping. And he was moved. Deeply moved in spirit. But you know what? It also says he was troubled. Troubled. Jesus was troubled in spirit. There must have been some kind of indignation in there of how death can impact us, the people who love those who pass away on this earth. Troubled. Jesus was troubled at seeing others who loved Lazarus undergo this pain and grief. And we are living in this earth through times where we see death around us, family members, friends. We're living through difficult times. At the time of this recording, we are still in a pandemic. And there are more sad stories that I could explain in the past year or tell, including my own family members and dear friends of mine, that I could ever explain in my whole life. And it is hard. Knowing that Jesus empathizes, that he weeps with us, that he's troubled when he sees our spirits troubled. To me, that means a lot. And I hope it means a lot to you too. I think it does. You know, we also see in another scripture how Jesus empathizes with us. In Hebrews chapter 4, in verse 16, it says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." Jesus, empathy. God has empathy. God feels our pain, and he's troubled by it. And Jesus went after this, he said, it says in verse 38, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. Once more, deeply moved. Wasn't just once, right? He came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. And then a little bit further down, it says in verse 43, when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Wow. Jesus rose him from the dead. This tells us a lot. You know, I wanted to share with you that earlier in the scripture, earlier in John 11, Jesus reveals a truth to Martha. Now, remember that Jesus, this is another truth, a really big and important and huge truth that he reveals to a woman. In a previous week, we talked about how he revealed a different truth, that he's the living water, that he is the Son of God, that he's the Messiah, to a Samaritan woman. Now here, Jesus is revealing another big truth to Martha. When it says in verse 24, Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die." Wow. "Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come to the world." Those we love, those who believe in him, and they pass on to this other life, those who are followers of him, right? It is comforting to know that they are not in death, but they are in life. That they don't die. And we won't die, us who believe in Jesus. This is a big comfort because Jesus is the resurrection. So this is what I wanted to encourage you with today. Understand and be reminded and know that Jesus is so full of empathy for our pain. He is troubled when he feels our pain, when he sees our pain, especially of grief. Grief is such a deep, deep feeling. I don't think there's anything like it. Nothing. Nothing like the feeling of grief in this world. And Jesus understands it. And yet he is the resurrection, and he is the life. And that is the hope that we have. I hope that this episode encouraged your faith, and I pray that it encourages your week. I'll see you next time.